Trump or Kamala?
Kamala Harris. She is a woman because she is a black woman, because she is smart, because she is educated, because she is tells the truth, and because she knows where she's going.
And Trump is a crook.
Why do you think Trump's a crook?
He doesn't tell the truth.
Does Kamala tell the truth?
Yeah, I think so.
You said she's smart and intelligent. What makes you think that?
The way she speaks. When she said, "I'm speaking," she was not only respecting herself, but respecting all women. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. And then Trump did it back to her.
I remember that too when Donald Trump did the same thing to Kamala Harris. Does that mean that him doing it shows respect for all men? And I wonder how this couple will feel about the vice president's latest blunder. She decided to skip the Al Smith dinner, a traditional event that's been attended by major presidential candidates throughout the years. Now, the only other person to miss it would be Walter Mondale, the Democrat that lost back in 1984, 49 states to 1. Oh, that guy got smoked. Now, the reason why she's skipping out on this event is because she's focused on campaigning in a battleground state. Now, the dinner benefits Catholic charities and is used to promote good humor between the candidates. But since Kamala Harris didn't show up, well, Trump was then forced to roast her without her presence. Now, before we even get to that, guys, others who attended the event were obviously offended by Kamala Harris's decision to skip this dinner. And guys, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. Hey guys, join us over in our private community. Join the conversation that's taking place on our Patreon platform, link in the description down below.
I think the Al Smith dinner is something that is incredibly important for tradition, for bipartisanship. I thought it was nice actually seeing Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump have a couple of jocular moments there where you did see Chuck crack a smile. And yes, Donald Trump did say things that I think, were a little bit over the line or frankly weren't very funny. But it's about the tradition and showing up for the church and Catholic charities. And they always schedule it this close to the election because they want to make a point of saying we are one nation and you can put two candidates in the same room who on every other day are running against each other and everyone be here for a more important cause and show unity. And so look, I thought it was a mistake for her not to go. Her video obviously fell completely flat. She did not have friends in the room. I think she offended the church. I think she offended a lot of the people who, stand up for that event and tradition, generally speaking.
Whoever thought of putting Chuck Schumer right next to Donald Trump is a genius, because the former president threw down some pretty stiff jabs his way, especially when he talked about President Joe Biden and how Nancy Pelosi pushed him off this race. Now, the goal, it was to be funny, to roast each other in a different light, which makes sense as to why Kamala Harris didn't want to be there. She knew that she would just be embarrassed by Donald Trump. She probably just embarrassed herself. And knowing how her writers have made her entire campaign as cringy as possible, she would probably not even have any comebacks. But it's as if her team isn't even done with the cringe. In fact, they produced this video that I hope got somebody fired. Although it's kind of hard to blame it all on them since the vice president is a lousy actress.
Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Gallagher. Mary Catherine Gallagher. It's so nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mary Catherine. Right now I'm trying to record my speech for tonight's dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know. I just want to say that I'm Catholic, and tonight is one of the biggest dinners next to the Last Supper.
It is a very important dinner, and it's an important tradition that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that. But that's gross.
So tell me something. I'm giving a speech. Do you have some thoughts about what I might say tonight?
My feelings about what you should say tonight would be best expressed in a monologue from one of my favorite made-for-TV series.
Okay, let's hear it.
Don't you see, man? We need a woman to represent us. A woman brings more heart, more compassion. And think how smart she must be to become a top contender in a field dominated by men. It's time for a woman, bro. And with this woman, we can fly.
What series was that from?
Oh, that's from House of Dragons, now streaming on HBO Max.
Is there anything that you think that maybe I shouldn't bring up tonight?
Well, don't lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness to thy neighbor.
Indeed, especially thy neighbor's election results.
Just so you know, there will be a fact checker there tonight.
Oh, that's great. Who?
Jesus. And maybe don't say anything negative about Catholics.
I would never do that, no matter where I was.
Kamala Harris then proceeds to continue with her speech, one that praises the Al Smith dinner as it sets aside partisanship and that it encourages unity, which is kind of what she's been trying to do, right? She says that we should all work together because these past 4 years have been awful on all of us. And you know what's funny about this? This dinner is right in line with her campaign goals. This was supposed to be an easy decision for her, and yet she rejected their invitation. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. Even comedian Jim Gaffan, who played Tim Waltz on SNL, he roasted the VP for her absence.
You know, this event has been referred to as the Catholic Met Gala. 22% of Americans identify as Catholic. Catholics will be a key demographic in every battleground state. I'm sorry, why is Vice President Harris not here? I mean, consider this. This is a room full of Catholics and Jews in New York City. This is a layup for the Democratic nominee. I mean, in her defense, she did find time to appear on The View, Howard Stern, Colbert, and the longtime staple of campaigning, the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Now, oddly enough, Tim Waltz wasn't there as well. And while Gaffan also made fun of Donald Trump, the former president also fired back with quips of his own. And this was the entire idea of the dinner, besides raising a record $10 million. But let's look at some of the best roasts that Donald Trump had for this night.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Waltz. Well, I'd better wrap up because Mayor Adams told me earlier that I needed to make this one very quick, especially the city has reserved this room for a large group of illegal aliens coming in from Texas. There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris? Doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me. A major issue in this race is child care, and Kamala has put forward a concept or plan. A lot of people don't like it. The only piece of advice I would have for her in the event that she wins would be not to let her husband Doug anywhere near the nannies. Just keep him away. That's a nasty one. Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
That last one was nasty, yo. Now, others argue that Kamala Harris wasn't there because it was just too much pressure, which begs the question. If you can't show up for a roast, then how can you represent the country? Because we all know that foreign policy is a very touchy subject. And if she's meeting with somebody like, I don't know, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, or Kim Jong-un, a cringe video won't do anything for her. And here's the worst news for Kamala Harris. Even CNN is now admitting that Donald Trump did amazing on this night. Check this out.
Brian Stelter, what did you make of this performance?
Oh, no, don't ask me first. I thought he was funny. I thought he actually got a few great jokes in. I thought the best moment was we talked about the assassination attempts and made light of what he's experienced, because I think he's experiencing real trauma, real PTSD as a result of the shootings, but he's still able to have a light moment in this room. And he took advantage of the fact that Kamala Harris wasn't there.
Your eyes did not deceive you guys. That was CNN's Brian Stelter praising Donald Trump. Now, I'm pretty sure that Vice President Kamala Harris regrets not going to this dinner now, but she's made her choice and she's going to have to live with it.
You know, when the kicker in football, they call a timeout right before he's going to kick the field goal. They're icing the kicker. So we were supposed to start at 5 p.m. This was the time they gave us. Originally, we were going to do 25 or 30 minutes. They came in and said, well, maybe 20. So it was already getting whittled down. And then the vice president showed up about 5:15. We were pushing the envelope to be able to turn it around for the top of the 6 o'clock. So that's how it started. And I could tell when we started talking that she was going to be tough to redirect without me trying to interrupt. I did this with President Obama. At one point, I just said, Mr. President, I know you like the filibuster. I just didn't even have the chance to sometimes redirect in those ways. I had a lot of other questions.
So she's running for president and she runs late for a schedule that she gave herself. What? Yeah, I know. This interview started as well as many of us thought that it would. Don Lemon needs some new eyeglasses and maybe even a hearing aid because Kamala Harris did not hold her own in this Fox interview. Not at all. There were moments where you saw her visibly triggered by some of these questions that were centered around the rhetoric against Donald Trump. It's no secret that they've contributed to the assassination attempts of the former president. They've done it through the violent rhetoric and the language that they've pushed on mainstream media. But here's what happens when she's confronted with the truth.
In fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He's talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the president of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Come on, Brett, don't show her the truth. She doesn't like that. She's more accustomed to propaganda. And that's what they've pushed on Donald Trump years. Does anybody here agree with Kamala Harris that Trump is the guy who puts Americans last? The one who demeans the people of this country? And you could see how pissed off she got when she got fact-checked right to her face. Because these journalists asked Donald Trump about this enemy within talk. But if we go by these past few years, we can confirm that Donald Trump has been investigated thoroughly by the current administration. Also, the current administration is guilty of locking people up for their criticizing them, for saying things that go against their narrative. Kamala Harris is again projecting. They're the ones who worked with social media companies to deplatform and silence individuals from saying things during their pandemic. And this is also why they don't like Elon Musk, because many people believe that he's returned our freedom of speech. It's pretty hard to spread misinformation when you've got community notes on X, which shows you that there's an enemy within, those who want to stifle our freedoms. And it's pretty evident with the federal government. I mean, you can see it in different government agencies. So her trying to spin this around to say that Donald Trump is calling us the enemy is misleading. Now, what's really amusing is that Trump's social media team posted this interview in full and called it their latest ad, which is honestly true because she self-destructed throughout this entire discussion. Now, this brings me to one of the most important parts of this interview. Kamala Harris's team is trying to piss off Donald Trump by calling him mentally unstable. Bear, on his end, didn't let this go because we've had President Joe Biden for the last 3.5 years. And with his debate performance on CNN, he proved that he was the one who was suffering from mental lapses. Look at how Kamala Harris reacts when she's challenged on this particular fact.
Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump. You call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experienced to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
But
is,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out.
I guess Biden seemed fine for her. Other than that, she also seemed to be okay with the border crisis. She's given a simple, canned answer for this issue. It's all Donald Trump's fault for killing their border bill.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
Now, speaking of which, she's made a very clear choice when it comes to illegal immigrants. The goal is to make them all citizens of our country. Now, guys, I covered this in a previous video that you have to watch because she's literally caught on camera saying this. As always, appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. I'll see you guys on the next one.